What if I told you that the secret to building wealth, growing your business, and ultimately finding peace is learning to do nothing? In 2021 and early 2022, if you bought an electric vehicle, a luxury watch, Bitcoin, or even growth stocks, you probably thought you were smart, that you just made a great investment. I mean, one look at the market at the time for any of these investments would tell you that the value of what you bought would keep on rising, because that's what was happening. Now, merely a year later, the value of your investments are dropped more than 15% from what you originally bought them for. I may be wondering, what if I didn't buy any of this? What if I just kept my money with me in the bank? Maybe I would have been better off. And my answer to that is yes, you'll be better off. We are culturally conditioned to believe that constant action equals progress. We hear it and see it everywhere in the world, and in specific areas such as motivational talks, gambling machines, and investment vehicles that all preach about having some level of motion is better than having no motion. In reality, the pressure to do something is often just an emotional reaction to fear or greed. This is called action bias, aka FOMO. It's a psychological hardwiring that equates activity with progress, even when the activity doesn't increase their financial value. By analyzing behavioral finance, two key principles of renowned entrepreneurs, we will conclude that doing nothing is probably the most productive decision you can make. But it's not just doing nothing, it's not just ignoring opportunities, but it's redefining what productivity looks like, and that's deliberate, strategic inaction. There's a phenomenon that happens in the human brain that makes it very difficult not to take action in the face of uncertainty. Action bias pushes the tendency to favor action over inaction, even when there isn't any empirical evidence that suggests that the action you would take would yield to a more favorable outcome. This bias is commonly seen in high-stress environments where standing still is perceived as a sign of weakness or a lack of control. Several psychological factors do contribute to this action bias in the context of investment and entrepreneurship. The first one is the belief that action increases a sense of control over a situation. During a market bubble, when you purchase an asset, you feel like you're getting in the game, whereby if you don't make any financial investments, you feel passive and sometimes helpless. The second factor is social signaling. Many people believe that will be perceived as more intentional and more favorable by their peers by trying and failing rather than not doing anything at all. As someone who's in startups and tech culture, I see this a lot. It's like a goalkeeper who jumps left and right during penalty kicks, thinking that they'll be able to save the goal better, when the statistical evidence has shown that they'll have a higher probability of making the save if they just stay in the middle. These actions are typically impulsive and driven by strong overconfidence that the investment will work out, and they are really based on short-term circumstantial gains from social media and viral success stories. The world's best investors earn their success not through hyperactivity but through patience. John D. Rockefeller, one of the greatest businessmen to ever live, had a philosophy that perfectly captures this strategic inaction. He was a person who would plan relentlessly, then execute. When he played checkers or chess, he showed extraordinary caution, studying each possible move before he would make a decision. I really like what he mentioned to players that tried to push him. He would say something like this: "I'll move as soon as I get it figured out. You don't think I'm playing to get beaten?" Charlie Munger, who is regarded as one of the greatest financial minds of the 20th century, captured this perfectly in saying, "The big money move is not in buying and selling, but in the waiting." His approach was discipline. Evaluate a deal in 60 seconds, then wait, sometimes for years. All enduring companies and all businessmen master this strategic pause. While strategic inaction can be productive, we must acknowledge the hidden cost of inaction. There is a fine line between strategic inaction and action paralysis. There's an opportunity cost that comes with the latter. Here I feel you have to be aware of inflation. This is more like a silent tax on your capital. Your cash purchasing power for future items will reduce if it sits idle. The second is opportunity cost. There could be investments that you could make that could yield a good return during that period of waiting because you didn't wait long enough or you waited too long. The goal, however, isn't to wait for the perfect moment, because that's a myth. The goal is to find a margin of safety and be a person of prepared action. To transition from acting on FOMO to strategic inaction, there are several tools that can help you. Number one is market study. If you're going to be waiting, the most productive thing you can be doing is studying industry trends and market cycles. There might be a window of opportunity that no one else is seeing. Number two, Warren Buffett's 20 slot punch card method. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Imagine you could make 20 investments in your whole entire life. What would you invest in? And why would you invest in it? This forces you to be selective and extremely decisive instead of making FOMO-driven decisions. Number three, cash flow. Focus on activities that generate immediate cash flow rather than speculative investments. This also applies to building the skills and systems that would help in generating this cash flow. This minimizes the chances of you making risky capital gain bets. The people who have the character to sit there with all that cash and not do anything aren't being lazy. They're exercising a form of elite discipline. Doing nothing is the hardest thing you can do, but in a market where a lot of your options erode your wealth, at times it's actually the best thing. The greatest risk isn't missing an opportunity though, but making an irreversible mistake that you can't afford. And one of the best things you can build right now is your network, because some opportunities are not found through the noise. They come through people, rooms, and conversations you are intentional enough to be around. This is actually part of why I'm building IntroMaven. It helps you find personal events, better rooms, and better ways to connect before you actually need the opportunity. If that sounds useful, you can sign up for the early access at intromaven.com. Thank you, and I'll see you around.